Hello, Gems. It's Lauren and John, surprise, and Lily, my lap dog for the show. At least she thinks she's a lap dog. If you have dreams, believe them and they can come true. Lily.
Yeah.
Many of you, as we've followed along the Kouri Richins trial together, have had questions, and so have I. Mostly being, who is Kouri Richins, the woman on trial charged with poisoning her husband, Eric Richins? Murdering her husband is her charge, actually, as well as many other charges. And lucky me, I'm married to a psychologist, and not just any psychologist, a forensic psychologist, so someone that assesses criminals, also a clinical psychologist. And today, you're going to answer my many questions. You have been studying all things Kouri Richins. I know you can't look at me very easily.
No, yeah, this was brilliant on the part of our producer because she's forcing me to look at the camera and not you. And I'm used to looking at you.
Right.
So when we sit at
That
our
helps you.
table, yeah. So
reassures you you're not married to Kouri Richins.
well, yes, that's true. I don't think anybody would want to be. I don't think anybody would want to marry to Kouri. Well, I can't drink that if you're drinking it, then
we're
it
good.
implies that
It's safe.
it's safe.
Okay. Well, yeah. So anyway, you have been studying all things Kouri Richins, and I just want to know overall, I know you have a lot to go through. This is going to be an intense show. For those of you that know Hidden True Crime, this is what we do. We cover the hidden motives, not just the paramour, not just the money, but deep down into why Kouri Richins would do what she does. Not just the things she's charged with, because, we don't even know if she's guilty of those, but just everything we've seen from her. I mean, there's a lot there. The recorded calls, the debt she was in, the lies she's told, whether or not she's guilty of murder, she's certainly guilty of being a liar and a chameleon in my book. But
right.
Where would you, so in other words, get settled in. We have a good show for you. And oh, there goes my lap dog. Lily's like, no, I'm out. And I have questions, and hit subscribe and hit notifications to follow all things Hidden True Crime. All right.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover. So why don't we start digging into it?
Okay. All right.
So
let's get into it.
yeah, so there's a lot to cover. We will talk about the body cam. We'll talk about Josh. We'll talk about everything. But as you know, my goal is to look at the details, but within the context of the larger picture. So the question I'm always interested in is the why. Why did this happen?
Yeah.
How did we get to the point, and why did we get to the point that a murder occurred?
Yeah.
So I think the place I want to start, let's start with the broadest view here. And the place I want to start is by asking the question, what does home represent to Kouri Richins? That's the question. If you want to understand Kouri Richins, and we're going to spend a lot of time unpacking this, if you want to understand Kouri Richins, you have to ask, what does home mean to her? What does it symbolize to Kouri Richins? I'm gonna give you, so in the Bryce call,
meaning the recent day 9 recorded phone calls with Bryce that they played in court, day 9 trial recap for those that missed it. We listened to those. Yes, the Bryce calls.
And the Bryce calls, these are a couple of the things she said in there.
Okay.
She said, quote, "The house goes to the trust. I just want the house. They can have all the money." Here's another quote. "They can have everything they want. Just give me the house." Right? So this is a theme that comes up all the time. Not only the house and the trust is she trying to get the mansion, let's call it the mansion.
The Midway Mansion.
The Midway Mansion. Not only is she talking about that with Bryce and Chelsea and her friends, but she's talking about it with Josh. A subject of a lot of the text is this house.
The Midway Mansion.
Right? A subject of, she takes out a loan for the Midway Mansion. Right? The Midway Mansion is in some ways equally the star or a star player in this trial.
Yeah.
Right. And so the question is, why all the focus on the Midway Mansion? Right. What and that gets to this issue of home. She's obsessed with this idea of finding a home. And so if you want to understand Kouri Richins, you need to understand, what does that mean to her? Right? That's what's driving this. I mean, there's more here that's driving it. But home is symbolic of something that we need to figure out. And then behind that, we're also going to talk about the psychology of greed. We're going to talk about the body cam and what that suggests, right? We're going to talk about
Eric Richins died.
We're going to talk about your question. Who is Kouri Richins? I guess the way I would reframe that is, who isn't Kouri Richins? Right? Like, I mean, so we want to figure out that too. That's part of this equation, is trying to look at that question of who Kouri Richins is. So where do you want to start with all of that? Because you've been sitting in the trial. so there's a lot of ways we can answer this question. We can answer it through any of these avenues. And I don't know.
Well, let's start with the body cam. The day Eric Richins died. Does that work? I gave him a list of things that we were going to talk about. So I my honeydew list. No, It was actually your honeydew list, all of you and your many questions. I delivered. So you got them.
So let's talk about the body cam. Yeah, let's start with the body cam. I want to frame our discussion of the body cam with, this may seem unusual, but in the Toshugu Shrine in Nikko, Japan, there's this. It's a beautiful shrine. It goes up many layers, and it's a famous shrine, by the way. You'll find there's different panels of what are called the three wise monkeys. And the three wise monkeys they're symbolic of three things. And those three things are, one of the monkeys is covering its eyes, and that monkey represents the idea of see no evil. The next monkey is covering its ears, and that's hear no evil. And then the final monkey is covering its mouth, and that means speak no evil. The basic premise of the monkeys initially was it was symbolic of moral restraint. In other words, if you don't let evil into your life, then you won't act evilly, or you won't enact, that you'll represent good.
Okay.
Right? You won't enact evil because you're not speaking about evil, you're not listening to evil, right? You're not acting in an evil way, you're not acting in a malicious way. That's how it originally began. That was sort of in Buddhist culture, that was sort of the original idea. It was about moral restraint and kind of staying on the proper path and being good. And one of the ways you can become good is, don't fall into evil. Don't say cruel things, right? Don't listen to people that are malicious and saying cruel things. But over time, of course, in Western culture, that evolved. And it evolved into essentially this idea of, in psychological terms, of denial. And when I say that, I mean like willfully ignoring wrongdoing. In other words, pretending not to see, hear, or acknowledge what is bad or wrong, or let's say even evil, right? It's denial. So it's essentially the monkeys now, to many of us, represent this idea of turning away from unpleasant truths.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're looking at this body cam, you're probably saying, what the hell does this have to do with the body cam, right? I'm going to explain what it has to do with the body cam. If you're watching this body cam, the most salient feature, the most clearly behavioral element of the body cam is Kouri Richins covering her eyes and covering her face, putting her head down. Kouri Richins is symbolic of the three wise monkeys, in the sense that that's what she's doing.
Wow.
Kouri Richins is largely turning away, I believe, I'm speculating here, is turning away from whatever unpleasant truths she's confronting.
Wow.
right? She is the three monkeys.
Yeah.
She's showing you why those three monkeys are so wise and are so important, right? And this is something you pointed out in your show, by the way, and you were dead on. Way to go.
Thank you. Thank you.
By the way, your shows are phenomenal. They're excellent. They're evidence-based, they're entertaining. I love them. So thank you for thank you for your great work on the shows.
Thanks for watching.
You're really nailing down this trial really well. So, and thank you guys for watching. Lauren, she's doing an amazing job. There's a moment. So if you want to know why I'm invoking the three monkeys as a metaphor for Kouri Richins, I'm going to tell you why specifically. Okay. There's a moment in the body cams that you correctly point out where the officer tells her, and maybe we can play this again because it's such an important moment. And I wonder how the jury reacts to this moment. But there's a moment when the officer tells her that his body is going to be sent to the medical examiner's office. And look at her reaction. That's her most pronounced, strongest reaction in the entire body cam. She essentially, for lack of a better term, she freaks out. She loses it. She stands up, right? She's been sitting the whole time. She's been covering her eyes the whole time. She doesn't want to see evil. She doesn't want to hear evil. There's times in this body cam where she's quite literally in the fetal position. Mm-hmm. She's on the floor. She's covering herself up, right? It looks like she's in the fetal position. But when she's sitting on the couch and the officer says, we're going to send Eric's body to the medical examiner, and she loses it, right? And her reaction, she starts saying, oh my God. And she stands up and she starts pacing and her anxiety goes through the roof. She hangs her head down into her knees. She covers her eyes. She's pacing.
So I'll explain to you what the process is right now. Because he was in good health and his age and everything like that. Okay, our medical examiner is going to come and do their investigation real quick, and then also our detective, just to make sure that everything's documented, correctly. And then from there, they'll explain to you what's going to happen. Most likely, what I'm thinking, because he has no serious health problems or anything like that. His age, most likely, they're going to take his body to the medical examiner's office just to make sure that there wasn't anything else.
Okay.
All right. Do you have any questions for me right now?
No. He had allergy shots yesterday.
Yeah, and that's what she was saying.
Last night when I was here.
What kind of allergy shots? Do you know?
He gets weekly shots.
Him and his boy get weekly shots.
So we're both just feeling
like seasonal allergies?
Yeah.
Okay, seasonal. And where was that at?
Park City.
Park City.
Family Medical?
No. Jeremy Ranch, Granger Medical.
Granger, okay.
Oh, God.
I did. They're all watching TV. I said, you guys got to go back to sleep. It's 4 o'clock in the morning.
And the question is, why is she doing that? Right? What is it that she's so afraid of? Right? This is a question that, by the way, this is a question on the Bryce call that comes up all the time, which is, why is she trying to control this narrative before the medical examiner has any findings?
Yes. Right.
What is she afraid of? Right. And so if somebody, in theory, if somebody's innocent, they should have no concerns about sending it to the medical examiner.
So
right?
They actually want that.
They would want that.
Help me understand what happened.
But consistent with the wise monkeys have wisdom, and presumably Kouri Richins doesn't. But putting that aside, the wise monkeys are a metaphor for moral restraint, which then becomes translated in Western culture into essentially ignorance or denial, turning away from the truth, right? And so this, I think, is the reaction that's most important, because it's an example of Kouri Richins turning away from the unpleasant truth that she presumably, allegedly, knows exactly what happened. And she knows that if that body goes to the medical examiner, they're going to find fentanyl in his body. You have to presume, and again, a jury hasn't necessarily agreed with this, right? But you presume that she's afraid. And her reaction shows fear, right? And so the question in the body cam, so this is an interesting question. The question that the defense attorney asks is Kouri, she doesn't ask, the defense attorney tells us that the body cam actually shows a picture of a grieving widow, right?
Correct. That's what the defense tells us.
But my question, I would reframe that question and say, okay, let's give her the benefit of the doubt, right?
Mhm.
As you watch the body cam, here's the question we should be asking. It's not, is this a picture of a grieving widow? The question is this a grieving widow, or is this an anxious, fearful widow, right? Those are different interpretations. Is that grief what we're seeing?
Right.
Right? That's the question. Is that grief that we're seeing, or is it something else? Is it fear? That's the question.
Yeah.
And so if the jury thinks it's fear, that's a very different interpretation than if they see that as grief. So I think in some ways the trial is going to hinge on this question, because the defense is going to argue that this is a grieving widow, and the prosecution's obviously going to dispute that and say, no, this is someone who's not really showing grief. She planned this, right? And
Yeah.
she has knowledge of what occurred, and she's hiding it. She's covering it up. She becomes the monkey that's trying to cover its eyes and see no evil, because she literally, in this body cam, she literally doesn't want to look at the truth.
She doesn't.
She literally does not want to see evil if she did it.
Yeah.
Right?
She will not look.
She will not look. She will not look. And if you think about, let's think about what that means, right? If I'm truly innocent and I'm grieving,
Mhm.
right? I'm grieving the loss of a spouse, and I'm shocked. And a police officer or officers walk into my house. I'm going to be despondent, and I'm going to want to connect with human beings, right? If I'm truly grieving, I'm going to want to look that police officer in the eyes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to want to say, I don't know what happened. I don't understand. I am right. I'm going to want to connect. Now, putting aside the fact that Kouri Richins struggles with connection, and putting aside the fact that in her book, one of her 3 C's was connection,
Well,
right? The irony of that.
Well, let me point out even more. When you assessed that book in Kouri Richins years ago, when she was first arrested,
Yeah.
the one thing you pointed out in that interview with Good Things Utah was that she said that she too was trying to learn how to grieve.
Yeah.
She wasn't just writing a book for her children. She was saying that she was trying to learn how to grieve. And so you're saying here that she's not grieving in this moment,
It doesn't appear to me she's grieving.
nor connecting.
Because if I'm truly grieving and I have nothing to hide and I'm innocent, let's say, when I'm experiencing grief, I'm going to want to connect.
Yeah.
I'm going to want to get help. I'm going to want to get answers from people. I'm going to be right. I'm not going to literally put my hands over my eyes and pretend that the world doesn't exist and pretend that what I'm seeing isn't real.
Right.
Right. And she doesn't do that, obviously, at all.
Right.
So I think it's fascinating that she actually does quite the opposite in these moments, right? That she's not looking to connect. She's literally kind of turning internal. She's closing her eyes.
Mhm.
She's seeing nothing, and she's making this into some fantasy about herself, that the police aren't going to see this. Like there's an officer there, by the way, who he keeps coming back to the truth, which is he recognizes the problem. What he says to her, so he asks her, does he have any medical problems? And this is another issue, by the way. So when you ask about medical problems and then you get a laundry list of like 100 things, or it's not 100, but when you get a laundry list from someone about all the possible reasons that person is deceased,
Sus.
that's not a good look either. That's desperation, right?
Lyme disease.
I wrote down some of the stuff.
Okay.
So here's her list of possibilities for why he died, why Eric died that night. Pain pills. He did pain pills in high school. He looked pale the previous night. His chest was hurting the previous night. He's dehydrated. He's tired because he had allergy shots the previous night. So this was a reaction to allergy shots. He has Lyme disease. He did THC gummies. He had an aneurysm. And I don't know, there's probably others. Those are the ones I wrote down. But I mean, when you start throwing out explanations that seem desperate, it's probably not a good sign.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if the jury's going to notice that. But in spite of listing all of these possible problems, the police officer keeps coming back to the truth, and he keeps saying he's trying to be empathic, by the way, right? He's giving her the benefit of the doubt.
Mhm.
He doesn't suspect foul play. But what he says several times is because of his young age and the fact that she didn't identify any major health problems, like, for example, a defective heart, right? Something that would have, or something that would have immediately kind of led to the possibility of a sudden death. That's what he says. He was young. He didn't seem to have any health problems. So we're calling the medical examiner, right? He knows this. And that's what she doesn't want to see or hear. That's what she doesn't want him to speak. She doesn't want the three monkeys to speak the truth, to see the truth, to hear the truth.
Yeah.
So that's why she's acting the way she is.
Interesting.
So I think that's the most important part of my analysis of the body cam, but I actually want to go a step further. So it's sort of like the infomercials where they say, but wait, there's more. Guess what? There's more. So I think that's the most interesting part of the body cam, but there's more.
There's more.
There's something. So the question is, if we're looking at grieving, if we're looking at her grief and we're trying to assess, so again, the question is this a grieving widow, or is this an anxious widow? Is this a fearful widow, right? And those will lead us in very different directions in terms of how we interpret this, right? But she is crying, right? She is acting, she's trying to act consistent with someone who's grieving, right? And so let's look at that. How do people develop the capacity to show emotions? So let's assume, for the sake of argument, that she knows what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know if she did, but let's assume for the moment that she did.
Yeah, we don't know the jury.
So somebody might say, some juror might say, well, wait a minute. I mean, she was crying. She was saying, oh my God, 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 right? Like,
she wasn't giggling. She wasn't happy.
she wasn't happy. She was emotional, right? Does that show that she's grieving? Like, let's look at that.
Mhm.
Well, there's something in psychology called behavioral activation. And I happen to know this quite well, by the way. It's not it's not necessarily an approach to treatment that I use in my own work or have used in my own work. I rely on it sometimes, but the basic idea in behavioral activation is it's especially pertinent to people with depression, by the way, but it applies to other things like post-traumatic stress disorder, and I've worked with veterans with PTSD quite a bit. Behavioral activation is the idea that, for example, I'll use myself as an example since I've struggled with depression. Okay, so that people with depression tend to withdraw from the world. They tend not to engage as much. They tend to avoid because they're depressed and they don't feel good. And right, they feel sad quite often. They might have more anxiety. There's a tendency to withdraw from the world. There's a tendency to become more avoidant. And you probably know this. So you know this from being married to me for 10 years. And so what behavioral activation involves is essentially engaging in behaviors that are the opposite of that, engaging in behaviors that are meant to facilitate emotions and in particular emotions and moods that are contrary to depression. So in other words, if I'm feeling depressed, maybe the best thing for me to do would be to get out of bed and go on a hike or go to the gym, right? Or to go on a date with you and have fun, right? Like behavioral activation is the basic idea that behavior and action, they generate and evoke emotions. So in other words, it's the behavior that leads to change. It's the behavior that leads to feeling something different. So if I'm feeling sad, then behavioral activation says, engage in a behavior that'll take you out of that state of sadness and make you feel better, right? There's this classic example in some psychology research about if you're feeling sad, smile. Like literally smiling can help you feel better. Or there's the famous example of the so-called power pose. That's been disputed now. But if you're going to go into an interview and your shoulders are slumped and you're feeling bad, right? You're not going to do as well in that interview because you're not acting like you own the room. So if you go in with the power pose and you stick your chest out and you're, really confident, in theory, you're going to perform better. That's behavioral activation.
Or pull a Stuart Smalley.
A Stuart Smalley.
SNL. I'm good enough. I'm smart
Darn
enough.
it. Yeah, you look in the mirror. No,
Doggone it, people like me.
Behavioral activation is a little different in the sense that
It's not just an affirmation.
It's not an affirmation. It's actually engaging in an action or a behavior that can, in theory, change your emotional state. So that's the idea of behavioral activation. I'm gonna tie this together in a minute.
Okay.
And when I think about behavioral activation, I always think of something called method acting. And method acting is when an actor essentially does something similar. They engage in a behavior. It's very similar. They engage in a behavior that makes them feel a certain way so that they can perform that role better. In other words, they step into that role and they try to live that role. So it's performative, right? Actors do this all the time.
Yeah.
There's actors I'm not sure if actors are trained in this as much, but old school actors used to talk about method acting all the time.
I think so. I've heard it. Yeah.
And the question here, so if we take this idea of method acting and behavioral activation and we look at this in terms of Kouri Richins, right? You see someone who keeps saying, oh my God, and look at her behavior. She keeps stomping her legs, right? She's shaking. Like she is engaging in actions that presumably could evoke grief. In other words, by doing some of the things she's doing behaviorally, by stomping her legs, by shaking her, like by showing agitation, by saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, that's a behavior too.
Yeah.
By doing those things, she's now able to feel more grief.
Brings more insight into I need to learn how to grieve from her Good Things Utah.
I think intuitively she knows she needs to show grief in that moment.
Right.
So what she does, so the basic idea behind behavioral activation, which is a psychological principle, and method acting, which is clearly a performative idea. The basic idea is that our psyche follows our behaviors and our body into reality. Our behaviors actually guide us to feel certain things and to show certain emotions. So I'm not necessarily saying that I know for sure this is what she's doing, but what I'm saying is that if she knows that she poisoned her husband, that's a hypothesis. If she knows that she poisoned her husband, the way that you show grief and express grief is through behavioral activation and or method acting. In other words, you perform as if you're grieving and then you show grief.
Okay. Yeah.
And so if the question is, well, look, she's crying. She's not crying. You can argue whether she's authentically crying, but she's crying. She's agitated. Her body's shaking. She's stomping her legs like she's anxious, right? That's grief, right? Well, maybe yes, maybe no.
Yeah. You don't know.
It depends.
Method acting.
Right. So I think that's a legitimate question. Is it performative? And again, it brings us back to, is this grief or is this something else? Is this grief or is this fear? Okay. That's the body cam. We're just warming up.
I know that I gave you a lot of questions and a lot of things to assess, and our gems have a lot of questions, but I think if we can skip ahead a little bit, day 9 was so interesting.
Yeah.
The calls with Eric Richins' friend Bryce and Kouri with Chelsea, her friend, being on the calls as well, Chelsea Barney. She was on the stand having to listen to those calls that I guess Kouri and Chelsea recorded, or Kouri recorded after Eric's death. And I think the reason, honestly, for the calls was maybe she was concerned that the Richins were calling her an incompetent mother, and she was trying to get Eric's friend on her side. But there were so many nuggets and things to talk about in these calls. Can we skip to day 9 and talk? The Bryce calls.
Okay. Yeah, let's jump ahead here.
Can't believe she recorded these, by the way. Not a good look, but go.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, I don't quite understand her motive. I think she was clearly trying to persuade Bryce of her innocence, which she believed that Bryce would, I presume she believed that Bryce would talk to the Richins family.
Yeah. Well, not just her innocence, but I think pity. And it was trying to show that she's the victim here.
Correct.
That this is a good friend of the Richins family, but look what they're doing to her. She wants her home. They're kicking a single widow now out of a home. They're calling her a bad mother. So I think it was, to sort of persuade more of the Richins side to see her as the victim and the Richins family as the bullies. That's my guess.
Yeah. So I already mentioned that she's obsessed with keeping her house. Right. That's an important part.
Yeah. She says she is. Yeah.
I think that's one of the most interesting parts of the Bryce call is this notion. Let me read it again because it's so important. They, meaning the Richins family, they can have everything they want. Just give me my house. So again, this idea of home and the mansion, the Midway mansion, represents so much to her. Symbolically and emotionally, that home is everything to Kouri Richins.
But this is just her home where she has her kids.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, she wants that too.
Right.
And we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. But the home she's referring to in the calls
is the home she's living in.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
I know. At a minimum, she wants that. And we'll get into that in a second. So, one of the things she said, let's start with some of the basics that we learned about Kouri Richins from this call. She tells Bryce, quote, and Chelsea, she says, quote, the girls can have all the life insurance money, meaning
Katie and Amy, Eric's
Right.
sisters.
And she talks about she takes out a loan on the house they're in for $250,000. And then
Correct.
she says that she turned the $250,000 into $11 million. She says, quote, we have $11 million today. And she argues that who wouldn't want to turn $250,000 into $11 million? We have $11 million today. I own 12 properties that are almost all paid off. Notice the almost. Almost. I think almost has new meaning. Almost like not paid off.
Yeah.
So
Almost.
let's start with that quote, right? Like just the dishonesty, right? Like it's so dishonest. It's so deceptive.
I agree.
It's so like that $250,000 did not get turned into 11 million. It got turned into negative. I don't know how much. How much was she in debt? It's hard to know.
Millions. She was in debt.
She's $1 million in debt. It turned into negative. I don't know what the number
Negative
is.
millions.
Negative millions, right? I don't have a number.
It was negative millions. If she sold all 11, or if she sold every single one of her properties, the forensic accountant told us on the stand she would still not be out of debt. She was in debt millions of dollars. Millions and millions.
Right. She would. So, I mean, at the very least, however you see this call, you have to see this as being wildly deceptive and wildly dishonest, right? So this is someone who struggles. Again, let's go back to the wise monkeys. This is someone who has her hands over her eyes. She has her hands over her ears. And she has her hands over her mouth. She's not speaking the truth. She's not hearing the truth, right? She's not seeing the truth. She's lying.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know what the jury's thinking or, how they're going to interpret that, but I think it would be hard to argue after what the jury's heard and after hearing this call that this is someone who's trustworthy and honest, because clearly she's creating this fiction, this fantasy around her money, arguing that she was quite successful and she made a lot of this money. She didn't.
Right.
So
Exactly.
you have this issue of deception. You have this issue of the importance of the house. We'll get back to those in a minute. And then there's a quote that you also picked up on in your show that is the most important part of the Bryce call, and this will set the stage for everything else we're going to talk about today. Quote, Eric would never let me work. Eric never trusted me. I know what I can do. Eric never gave me a chance because he didn't believe in me, and the debt was paid off in 7 months. Well, the debt obviously wasn't paid off in
It
7
wasn't.
It wasn't. But this whole idea of blaming this on Eric in some ways, right? And that he won't let her work. He didn't trust her. He didn't believe in her. This is going to be a persistent theme with Kouri Richins.
Yes, it is.
This is going to define our analysis of Kouri Richins. This is going to define our analysis of what home means to her.
Okay.
He didn't believe in me.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's really important. Because what we're going to learn about Kouri Richins is that there's never enough for Kouri Richins. That there's never enough money. There's never enough love. There's never enough of anything right? For Kouri Richins, everything is always the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that doesn't exist because there's no leprechaun, right? So she wants to find the leprechaun in the pot of gold. And
So do I.
well, yeah, I mean, we
Right.
all do.
Don't we all? Yeah,
I
don't we
guess.
all?
Well, no, I don't know if I do, by the way, but I mean, we'll talk about that. So that quote is really important, and you picked up on it. You discussed it. Did you want to mention anything about?
Well, I think it says what she feels about herself. That's what I caught too. You know, he didn't believe in me. Look what I can do. You know, he didn't trust me. If given a chance, look at me. It goes along with some other texts to Josh, the paramour. I love saying paramour. I've never, the paramour, the lover, the secret lover, where, we'll get to that later, but where she says that she was cleaning toilets of rich people's homes.
Yeah, let me read that now, as a matter of fact. So
okay, so we're jumping ahead.
We're jumping ahead here because
this is important.
This is going to be a similar motif.
So Kouri Richins text to Josh Grossman, or Robert Josh Grossman, the paramour secret lover, who I've talked to Josh now, and this is a text from Kouri to him.
Right.
Go ahead. Yeah.
This is a text from P. This is a text from Lima Bean to P in the pod.
Yes.
So Lima Bean is Kouri, and P in the pod is Josh.
Yes.
Here's the quote, and this isn't exact. It's pretty close, but I had to narrow it down a little bit. And the reason I'm reading this is because I want to lump it together with the previous quote about Eric never trusting her, right? These overlap. So Kouri, in the text, Kouri says, quote, "When I was little, I grew up scrubbing other people's toilets. I was always looked down upon. Tomorrow, I close on 3 properties. It's never been about the money. It's about being able to say, I too have properties in Park City, and you're not better than anyone the way you treat people, and I can prove it."
Yeah. That text.
That text really, really gets us closer to understanding Kouri Richins. That text and her statement to Bryce about Eric not believing in her, those two overlap.
Okay.
Right. So as long as we're talking about those ideas.
You had a bunch of notes on that text. We're going to get back to that.
Yeah, we'll get back to it
Okay.
in a second.
I'm so close to you. It's so fun being this close to you on the couch, but I can see everything. And I'm like, but that. Okay, I'll wait patiently.
So I'm going to back up a little bit here, and I'm going to do what I like to do, which is to go from minutia to the 10,000 foot view, right? The bird's eye view. And in order to understand those texts, I think we have to really kind of look at what I would call the psychology of greed.
The psychology of greed.
Of greed.
Right.
Because really, this is not only is this a story about what home means to her, it's also a story about greed.
Yeah.
And what is greed? So at the simplest level, greed is not having enough, right? It's accumulating stuff. It's typically possessions, but it also can be people.
Mm-hmm.
It can be love interest, right? Like Josh. It's greed is never feeling satisfied, never feeling fulfilled, never feeling like you have enough. What's the goal of greed? What's the goal of accumulation? The goal is safety,
Mm-hmm.
feeling safer because you have more. It's status,
Mm-hmm.
right? We see this in the text. Well, I can compete. I can compete with all those rich Park City.
I'm cleaning their toilets, but watch this. Yeah.
Greed is also about controlling your environment. The more you accumulate, especially money, the more control you have over your life and over your environment. It's about admiration. People will look up to you if you're wealthy. If you have all these properties, in theory, because you have
Yeah.
more status, people will look up to you. And most importantly for our discussion, I think it's a way to attempt to relieve a sense of inner emptiness.
Yeah.
That if you feel like you're not enough and you don't have enough, and somehow you accumulate all this stuff or you do all this stuff and you're so successful, then in theory, you filled up that void. You filled up that emptiness, right? So I wrote down some notes about different psychological components of greed that I think are relevant to this discussion. I'm just going to go through these quickly. I think there's a bit of what I would call scarcity psychology here, which is that when people feel that resources, love, recognition, and safety are limited, then they become more occupied with accumulation. So
Interesting.
she certainly feels some measure of scarcity, that she doesn't have enough, so she needs more property, she needs more love, she needs more attention, right? She needs more safety.
Mhm.
This idea of safety speaks to home. If we think of home, so let's get back to that idea quickly. I'll touch on that here. We'll talk about it later. Home should represent the place where we feel safe.
I agree.
Home should represent the place where we feel secure,
Yes.
like right here, right
Yes.
now,
Yes.
right? And so I do, by the way, feel so. But if you feel like you don't have enough, then you believe that by accumulating more, you will somehow fill up that void, right? You feel like that accumulation is the way to solve that problem. Greed is also related to a social comparison, right? Which is status.
Yeah.
Um,
The one scrubbing the toilets versus the large home and the owner of the large home.
Right. So a person may feel like they have enough, or they may feel fine until they compare themselves to other people who have more money or more power or more beauty or more influence.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Right. Because then enough feels inadequate.
Yeah.
Right. And so this idea of comparison, social comparison or status comes into play here too, right? That's another reason why greed exists. I also wrote down that it's about control and reducing anxiety. That if we accumulate wealth, influence, or possessions, we feel like we have some protection against uncertainty.
Makes sense.
So in that sense, greed functions as a defense mechanism against feeling helpless, against feeling uncertainty.
Probably why hoarding is also a psychology.
Yeah.
I know that's a tangent, but
Absolutely.
that's helping me process hoarding a little bit too. That it's a sense of control, even though it looks like someone's out of control, but to them, it's a protection. Okay. Anyway, keep going. Sorry about that tangent. I just had an aha moment. So, okay.
So another thing I wrote down is that greed has a relationship to our identities and our self-worth. A lot of people unconsciously equate the idea that having more means that they are more.
Mm-hmm.
Having more means that they're more, right? And so it enhances their sense of self-worth. It becomes tied to their self-esteem. They feel like more success means that they have more worth.
Yeah.
And so they feel like if they're not accumulating or somehow falling behind and not keeping up with the Joneses, then that feels like losing. That feels like declining, right? And so that's another reason. That's why people get on this treadmill of working more and more and more. Because if they're not working more and more and more, and they're not accumulating, that feels like they're losing in the game of life.
Right.
And I think this is probably, for me, this is the existential one. This is probably the one that I think is the most interesting because I'm, as you know, I'm kind of a philosopher at heart. I studied philosophy as undergraduate. That part of me has never loved philosophy. I think like a philosopher oftentimes.
My philosophizing, football playing feminist is what I called you when we met.
And the final issue that greed tries to solve is this issue of what I would call emotional emptiness, or let's call it loneliness. Loneliness would be another way to do it, just to describe it. And the way that works psychologically is that greed becomes a substitute for unmet emotional needs. So a person will chase acquisitions because they cannot tolerate being alone. They can't tolerate vulnerability. And they, most importantly, they can't tolerate an inner sense of lack. This idea of lack, by the way, like if we're talking philosophy, there's a psychoanalyst, he's a French psychoanalyst. His name is Jacques Lacan. He's brilliant. He's also a philosopher. He had a tremendous influence on the French philosophers, French school of thought. For those who know something about philosophy, specifically some of the postmodernists in French thought. And Lacan, the basis of Lacan's entire approach to psychoanalysis and philosophy is based on this idea of lack, that human beings desire things. And desire, by the way, is not bad. Desire is good, because desire keeps us engaged with life. If you don't desire, then in some ways you're disengaged from life. You've checked out of life. The issue is, for Lacan at least, the issue is that you can never fulfill your desires. That in some ways, it's the very condition of life that you lack fulfillment. That doesn't mean you can't chase fulfillment. It means that you can never finally, absolutely reach a state where you're not lacking something.
Interesting.
And so this is going to bring me back. So this is going to bring me full circle. We started with the wise monkeys, which has its origins in Buddhist thought. I'm going to return now to a Buddhist idea, which I always think about when I think about greed. A lot of psychologists will talk about this idea when they talk about addiction, by the way. But in Buddhist thought, there's this metaphor of what's called the hungry ghosts. The hungry ghosts are exactly it's exactly what you'd expect. That if a ghost is going to eat and nourish itself, it's not going to last long, right? The hungry ghost metaphor is that ghosts are always hungry, because a ghost can never be fully nourished. So the ghost has to eat, and the ghost seeks enrichment and nourishment, but it will always remain unfulfilled.
Yeah.
Right. And the metaphor in Buddhism is, it's a metaphor for craving, that human beings crave more and more and more. So it's closely aligned with greed. Right? Human beings, they crave more and more and more, and they think they're going to fill up. They think they're going to fill up this void in these buckets in the way that I just talked about.
Yeah.
But they fail. They fail because there's another idea. So there's another idea in Buddhism that's important to talk about here, and that's the idea of impermanence. The term that in Buddhism that is one of the terms I use all the time. Well, not all the time, but it's a term that's near and dear to my heart. And it's called, the term in Buddhism for impermanence is anicca, A-N-I-C-C. And that means impermanence. In Buddhism, there's something called the 3 marks of existence. The first one is suffering. That's dukkha, D-U-K-K-H-A. Anicca is impermanence. And anatta, A-N-A-T-T-A, is the doctrine of no self. But for our purposes, the one I want to focus on is this idea of anicca, or impermanence. And impermanence is the idea that everything is transitory. Everything is impermanent.
Everything changes.
Everything changes. Everything's in flux. We all age. We all have limitations.
Right.
Right. Everything we have will eventually go away. In Buddhism, sometimes Buddhists say everything that arises falls away. Human beings don't like this idea very much. Human beings want to think that things are stable, that they're solid, and they'll last forever.
Yeah, we do.
But this idea, so this is where this idea of lack comes in. If you see the world as transitory and an impermanent, if you see everything as impermanent, then whatever you chase, whatever you crave, whatever you seek, whatever you try to grasp, it's going to be temporary. So right now, this moment, we have this moment. And we'll have this moment in memory, right? But we can't grasp it. We can't make this moment. We're filming it. We'll have it on film, guys. We'll have this moment on film, but we're not going to ever recapture this moment as it is.
No.
Because we can't, right? That's lack. You can go to the store, you can dream about buying an outfit for months and you can save enough money. You go to the store, you buy the outfit, right? You think it's going to make you feel good. You put it on, you have a moment where it probably makes you feel great, but it won't perpetually make you feel the same way. That's lack. Human beings, whether we like it or not, we live in lack. We live with some sense of emptiness. It's difficult. We live with some sense of helplessness. We live with some sense of vulnerability because that's the human condition. And so what, at the most fundamental philosophical level, what Kouri Richins is trying to do here is she's trying to accumulate her greed through her greed and her grasping. She's like a hungry ghost. She's trying to accumulate properties, money, romantic partners like Josh to fill that void, to fill that sense of emptiness, to make herself feel better, to make herself feel like she's enough.
Yeah. And that's why, for those on the outside looking in, thinking she had it all, right? This handsome husband, a beautiful home, stability, a hardworking husband, all these things, and it wasn't enough. There was lack. There was greed.
There was lack. There's always lack, right? We'll talk about the solution to that a little later. Or I don't know if it's a solution. There's no final solution to feeling that, but this is also from. Let's go back to the Bryce call here quickly, because this is going to take us into some of her past. This is going to be from the Finding True Self retreat.
Oh, in Sedona, Arizona.
Yeah. But
right,
before that,
right when I heard the name of that too, I was like, that just sounds hokey. But I mean, I love Sedona, but okay.
Yeah, Sedona is beautiful. So let's go to, this is another quote. This is from the Bryce call. According to Kouri Richins, this is what Eric would tell her. Apparently, this is what Eric would say to her. Quote, "You're selfish, you're not enough, and you need me."
Right.
So that type of quote, by the way, is not going to help her, right? That it's not going to help her feel like she's enough. And I don't know if she said this, but you said this on the show. You said that she, quote, had to chase happiness because she was never enough for her husband. Did she say that?
No.
Or was that your interpretation?
That's my interpretation.
Okay.
She did not say that. That's my interpretation. And we don't know if Eric ever really said to her, "You're not enough." I think it's how she feels.
Well, she did. She said, right. But she did say in the call, she said that he told her,
right, that you're not enough.
You're selfish. You're not enough. And you need more. You need me.
Right. Yeah. But even then it could be a lack of trust. You know, I don't trust you. You can't do this. You know, rely on me. And he's saying that she's not enough. Yes, but yes, that's how she's interpreting whatever Eric is saying to her.
Right. And so that's important. All these quotes from her are important because it shows that the problem is not wanting too much. It's an internal problem. The problem is that external acquisition will never resolve the internal feeling of instability, emptiness, and suffering. And when I say external validation, I don't just mean stuff. I mean external validation from her husband, external validation from Josh, external validation of any kind, right? The problem here is that this is an internal struggle. And this gets back to, for me, this gets back to psychology and Buddhism, which is closely aligned with psychology in many ways, that in Buddhism and in my field, therapy, psychology, forensic work, clinical work, the goal largely is to get people, to get human beings to see that it's not the external stuff that matters. It's your internal world and how you react to things, how you interpret the world, how you symbolize the world, right? And that takes us back to this idea of home.
Yes.
What does home represent to Kouri Richins?
Right. What? Yeah.
Before I answer that question, we're going to have to get to the Sedona retreat.
Sedona, the true self.
The true self, right?
True
So,
self retreat.
so the Sedona retreat is called Finding True Self Retreat, Sedona 2021. They were asked to write a third-person autobiography. The person that talked about this true self retreat, and by the way,
Allie
Staking,
her best friend.
as long as I'm talking about if I'm talking about in Buddhism the 3 marks of existence, remember that one of those marks is what's called anatta. Anatta is the doctrine of not true self, of no self. So if you think about if you think about this idea of impermanence, right? Buddhism essentially says that the self is an illusion in many ways, because if you look for if you look for what the self is, you're not going to find something, right? There's no thing that a self is. I can't open your brain and say, oh, Lauren is this thing. What I'll find are memories, right? Memories hold your experiences. What I'll find are, so essentially you'd have to say that the self is somehow tied to memory, right? But memory fades. Memory is imperfect. If the self is some type of narrative or some type of memories that we have, then you'd have to argue, and memories change, right? Memories are reconstructive. They're not permanent. And as I can tell you, my dad's getting older and he's forgetting everything. I can tell you that who my dad was 10 years ago is not who he is now.
Yeah.
If there is this idea of a true self in Buddhism, at least, and we could debate this, right? Would be a scholarly debate. We could debate what the self is, but Buddhism contests this idea that there is even a true self. I would argue that there's something maybe approaching the idea of authentic self, which is that there's certain experiences and memories we have that we feel like represent us and our values and our commitments and our dreams and our hopes, right? That would be some version of the self.
Right.
But is that permanent?
That's what scares me the most. Is to me the thing that matters most are my memories. And I think that's the thing I'm most afraid of losing.
And we'll talk about that a little later, by the way, in terms of when we do think of what really matters. If it's not greed, and if it's not accumulation, and it's not houses, and it's not money, like Kouri Richins thinks, then what is it? What is it that really matters? And if everything's impermanent, then what is it that matters, right?
Well,
but let's
depressing.
Before we, no, it's not. It's not really. Well, why do you think I'm depressed? All right. So before we can answer this question at home, I'm straying a little bit here, but sorry guys, this is getting really philosophical. I warned you that I'm a philosopher at heart. Okay. But we really want to understand Kouri Richins, right? Am I helping with that? That's the goal here.
You are.
Okay.
You are.
Okay, thank you.
Are we going to talk about,
Let's talk about this letter she writes, this third-person autobiography. We need to understand this. So here's a little bit of history on Kouri. She was born in Oklahoma. Her brother is Ronnie. She lived in 17 different states growing up, so her father moved all the time.
This is according to the True Self retreat.
The letter.
With Allie Staking, the letter that she wrote about herself. Okay. Born in Oklahoma. Brother Ronnie lived in 17 different states.
Her father was an alcoholic who was in an accident where he apparently ran into a police officer, and he spent 6.5 years in prison.
Wow.
Because of that. Her mother was a compulsive gambler. She was rarely home. Their homes were foreclosed on multiple times. Their cars were repossessed multiple times. Her mother was always in debt. Having a stable family was her biggest dream.
Interesting.
Having a stable family Note that. That's going to be
Oh,
important.
I've noted it. Having a stable family, her biggest dream. Again, confusing, but
So she married in 2013 because she was pregnant and she wanted to have a stable family. She went to graduate school because she, quote, thought it would make her, quote, make her happy, unquote. She had more children because she thought her children would make her happy. And again, that becomes another example of accumulation,
right.
right? Like in some peculiar way, having more children, she thinks are going to make her happy. But if we go back to this idea of hungry ghosts and greed and grasping and accumulation and lack, children certainly are wonderful and they add value to our lives. But will they make you happy? There's actually a lot of research showing that children decrease happiness in marriages. That's not to say, by the way, that parents don't love their children. It just means that parents make a lot of sacrifices for their kids. So she got pregnant when she was 22 years old. She in college. She didn't expect to get pregnant, but she did. She was married in 2013. She believed that graduate school, so she went to get a master's. She believed that graduate school would make her happy. And again, this idea of finding happiness through accumulation. If I get a graduate degree, right, that's accumulation, status, all the things I've talked about. If you just have these things, you will be happy. If you have the mansion on the hill,
Right.
you'll be happy. If you have all the money in the world, you'll be happy, right? The reality is you won't. But hey, you know, for her, that's her belief.
Yeah.
Then she believes that having more children will make her happy. She learns at some point that her husband, Eric, has an emotional affair, and she seeks counseling for her anxiety surrounding the emotional affair. So that's what we know about from assuming this letter's accurate.
Yeah. A letter she wrote at this retreat about herself.
Right. So this is what we know. This is what we learned about her history. And I think there's some really fascinating stuff in this history if it's accurate,
Yeah.
right? That a father who's an alcoholic, and so basically I could argue that her parents were both addicts of sorts, although compulsive gambling isn't necessarily.
And I want to point out too, this I know not from this. Her father did die of alleged alcoholism.
He died young with
Yeah.
cirrhosis, right?
She was about 19-ish, 20, I think, when
Okay.
her dad died. Yeah. So I guess I'm saying this all makes sense. But
just looking quickly at her history, it seems reasonable. It seems reasonable to speculate that there were probably some attachment issues, that it's possible to think that she said her mother, you know, after her father died, her mother was never home at
Right.
all.
Had to work full time.
Right. There's at the very least, you'd say that there's instability, moving to these different states, having homes foreclosed on repeatedly, cars foreclosed on, her mother being in debt. This was not a stable childhood.
Mhm.
Growing up with parents that had different forms of addiction, right? That's problematic.
Yeah.
And so it's easy to see, if we think about that, it's easy to see why she's putting so much stock and faith in this idea of having the perfect home, and why she doesn't want to give up her home, because
Right.
her home, let's go back to this question now. What does her home represent?
Right. What does her home represent?
To her, it represents stability. To her, it represents safety. To her, it represents comfort. To her, it represents security. It represents all those things she never had in childhood. Here's the problem. This is a big problem.
I'm listening.
That because she was shaped in this environment unconsciously, she may want, she grasps to this idea of the home as being a place of safety and security, but she doesn't know how to create that. She doesn't know how to achieve that. And this is the irony, right? This is the tremendous irony and tragedy of Kouri Richins, is that she actually did the opposite. Instead of creating a home that was safe and secure, she created a home that was dangerous. And it was a place where her husband eventually was murdered.
In his home.
He was allegedly murdered.
Allegedly. In his home.
In his home. In his home.
In his bed. In his home. Allegedly.
Right. And I think this is one of the reasons, by the way, why this case is so interesting to a lot of people. Just this idea that there's danger lurking in the place where we're supposed to feel the safest, right? That their danger exists even in our most intimate and closest relationships.
Great.
I think that idea is really fascinating to a lot of people.
I agree.
And, you know, if we think about why that's so problematic, I think that what I would say is that there's some fundamental kind of what I would call them moral intuitions. There's some fundamental moral intuitions that this idea of home violates. One of those would be that we see the home as a place where we should be nurtured. We should be cared for, right? And what you have here is a home where there's harm. Now, I don't know, it was mentioned, by the way, in the Bryce call, there was some discussion that Eric had an anger management book that he wrote in every day.
Yeah. Or he
I don't know what that's about.
Neither do I.
Was there domestic violence in this home? I don't know. You know,
She never mentions it. As in like physical.
she says, again, when she's talking about that to Bryce, she says, quote, "You just didn't believe in me." She's talking about Eric. She goes back to this theme about Eric not believing in her, Eric not trusting her, right? Again, this is that idea of external validation. It's never about her. It's always about what he can do for her.
Right.
That somehow if he believes in her, that she'll find more validation and she'll be happier, right? I mean, but putting that aside, that was a moment, that was sort of an interesting moment for me because it suggests to me that the danger in this home might be deeper and wider than we know about. You know, she's not arguing. So this is another interesting issue that in most they're called interpersonal homicides, IPHs. That's what the research calls them, IPH, interpersonal homicide. In most interpersonal homicides, they're reactive. They're reacting to abuse. So women that kill their husbands, typically in the vast majority, like 80+%, the numbers differ depending on the study. Most of those women, and this is consistent with Lenora Walker's idea of the battered women's syndrome, or the BWS, battered women's syndrome, which is sometimes used as offense for women that murder their husbands. Most of those homicides are committed because of domestic violence, because there's some type of abuse in the home. And she alludes to it here, but obviously her defense, maybe they're going to bring it up, but that's not her defense.
Well, she's denying she did it.
So it's as long as we're talking about that, I think it's important to note that I often talk about there's a difference between reactionary violence, which is more trauma centric and it's based on abuse, but that is consistent with battered women's syndrome. And then there's another type of violence which is called instrumental violence, which is more premeditated, right? And this is a case of instrumental violence because there's planning.
Correct.
If this is murder, there's planning.
Plotting.
Right? There's plotting. It's quite goal directed, right? Reactive violence is often impulsive. It's self-defense. Women are reacting to, typically they're reacting to their husbands threatening them. That does not seem to be the case at all here.
Well, no, the motive would be money.
Yes,
The motive
exactly.
would be money. and
Exactly.
A love that isn't Eric, not a reaction to anything. Right. It's a plotting and a planning, especially when you throw in the attempted murder charge on Valentine's Day.
So women that kind of fit the trauma survival profile of battered women and abusive women that react and impulsively and murder their husbands, those women are less likely to have, let's say, personality disorders. The women that engage in intimate partner homicide that are more goal directed and based on finances and money and insurance, cashing in insurance policies, are much more likely to be predatory and to show antisocial traits, by the way. And I'm not saying, I'm not diagnosing here. I'm just talking about the research in general, that the women who tend to fit this profile of financial crimes and financial gain tend to have more personality disorders, and they tend to be more predatory, and they tend to show more antisocial traits. So, but getting back to this idea of home being a place of safety, which is how she sees it and how Kouri can't realize that, I think it's interesting that she does mention this anger management workbook, that it makes me wonder if, and also obviously she took out a lot of loans behind Eric's back.
Right.
So she violated his trust, right?
Right.
She's not creating.
No.
If her goal is to create a safe space and a secure space and a comfortable space in her home, she's not doing that.
No, she's not.
And so this is where the discrepancy, by the way, between what you think you want and the conscious elements of our lives versus the unconscious, which is her past or unstable past or traumatic past, this is where those clash.
Yeah. Right.
You see her wanting consciously to have, she's obsessed with keeping this home. She wants this, but she can't get it because her internal world is so chaotic. Right? Her internal world is so dysfunctional in some ways that she doesn't know how to realize this. She doesn't know how to create this safe home, but she clings to it. So this becomes fantasy to a large degree because she clings to this idea that if she just has this home or just has this mansion on the hill, she'll be happy. She'll be safe. She'll be protected. And yet the irony is she's incapable of that. Right? She's
True. We'll get to more of that dream of hers with her text with Josh, because she talks a lot about her dreams with Josh. But yes.
So let me get back to, so I'm getting back to this idea of the kind of the why we find this so fascinating, I think, because there's three moral intuitions about home that we kind of rely on. I mentioned care versus harm, or nurturing versus harm. There's another one, which is loyalty versus betrayal. That we expect, there's a tacit assumption that our spouses are going to be loyal, and they're going to love us, and they're not going to betray us. So marital trust is so important. If you have kids, the marital bond and the marital trust is in many ways, right? It's sacred in some ways, and violating that, what she does, she takes out loans, she does all this financial stuff behind his back.
Right. Not just the relationship, but also financially betrays his trust. She betrays his trust financially, romantically.
She's having an affair.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I guess he had an emotional affair.
According to Kouri.
According to Kouri. Okay. So we don't know if that's real.
They've brought up an alleged affair in court many times. The defense has about Eric. No one will confirm it. I think they're trying to avoid that in some way, but it sounds like they certainly allude to it. And it sounds like there was perhaps an emotional affair. on Eric's part. We don't know though.
And the other moral tuition I think that's really important here is what I would call power versus empathy. Or maybe the better way to describe that is power beneath intimacy. In other words, we don't anticipate, or we hope that the people we love are not going to somehow use their power to try to control us, right? We want some degree of reciprocity, right? And she's behind the scenes, right? She's subverting his power. And I think he senses that. He doesn't, not only does he not trust her when he learns about the money, he consults a divorce attorney, but he feels like he senses at some level that she's subversive.
Right.
And so you can say, oh, he said these things to her about, not trusting her, not right, all that stuff, but maybe there's good reasons.
Yeah, right.
Maybe there's good reasons he doesn't trust her.
Sounds like it. Yeah, I agree. That's where I said, I've tried to have empathy for her. I don't know if I'd appreciate it if a guy just loved me because I was the mother to his children. I said that, I've tried to have empathy for her, right? I don't know if I would like it if someone didn't trust me, to go out and make dreams come true. Thank you, babe. But yeah, she has given him reasons to not trust her.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
How can you hold that against him? So that's what I thought is interesting too, is I have tried to give her empathy and the benefit of the doubt and thought, gee, that would be hard. But again, she hasn't helped him in trusting her.
Yeah. And so I think this idea of home is so interesting here because, and again, if I'm going to go back to this idea, if we want to understand Kouri Richins,
your water. I saw you grab it.
Yeah, I know.
And I've got like so many different things. I've got caffeine. I've got tea. I've got water. Toast.
Yeah. This is water.
To a long episode. Okay.
So let's return. So I said at the beginning, if we want to understand Kouri Richins, we need to understand this idea of home. And so let me unpack this a little further. So the basic premise here is that human beings in general, including Kouri Richins, ironically, we want to see our home as a safe place. And we want to see our partner as a protector.
Yes.
And we want to see our partner as someone we can trust, and someone that we're in a reciprocal relationship with us, that won't use power over us, that won't try to control us. And we want to see our family, if we have kids, we want to see our family as a place of safety and refuge. In other words, right, we want our family to be safe and comfortable and harmonious and cohesive.
And to be accepted. I think that's a big thing for me. To be accepted just as I am.
Right, to be accepted.
But that's love, Yeah.
So I think this is a case where all the betrayals and all the violations of trust, they really kind of shatter those core expectations we have about home. Even though Kouri's adamant about the fact that that's what she wants more than anything.
Right, she wants it more than anything, and look what she's charged with. Wild.
So I think what to me, like one of the things that's really interesting about this case is that the brain kind of says, if safety doesn't exist here, if safety doesn't exist between us and our home, then where does it exist?
Yeah.
Right. It makes the world a place that's alarming. It makes the world a place that we should be fearful of, right? If we can't find some measure of happiness or safety and security in our home, where are we going to find it? Right. And I think that's the idea that Kouri Richins is really trying to cling to. She knows, she intuits this. The problem is she doesn't know how to recreate it, and she doesn't know how to realize it, and she doesn't know how to enact it. She can't create the conditions for a safe space because she doesn't know how.
Yeah. And it'd be so basic to me. Like, just sit down, go to bed, don't kill your husband.
No
Let him,
no Moscow meals allowed in our house.
don't take out loans secretly. You know, just basics. But anyway, right. But
Yeah, be honest.
yeah. So if
Be
the
honest.
person that say she doesn't know how, like, just stop. And
Yeah,
But-
a little
but yeah.
honesty would help. And by the way, and so now this kind of moves us over a little bit into this idea that you asked, which is, who is Kouri Richins?
Yeah.
And this will take us into the idea of a false self versus an authentic self.
Okay.
So most of us have what I would describe, most of us wear masks at
Okay.
some point, you know, to some degree. I mean, with different degrees, right? But we have a public persona and a private persona. And I think with Kouri Richins, I think that's especially amplified,
Yeah.
right? It's especially amplified. And I could argue
Because
that,
everybody acts different in different situations, right?
yeah, right, context.
Yeah. Context is everything. Everyone acts differently with different friends or at work and at family or on a date.
Yeah. And so,
And that's what you mean by public and private personas.
yeah. And I would argue too, that if we,
Be careful with all the paper moving. You're making white noise, literal white noise. Okay.
I would argue with if we trust the research about the different types of interpersonal homicide, and that the vast majority of those are more reactive to abuse, right? They're more victim centric in the sense that the victims of abuse act out and to protect themselves. That shows that the small percentage of interpersonal homicides that occur that are more goal directed and more financial in nature, that there's more personality disorders among that small group, right? Then you have to start thinking perhaps there could be a personality disorder here.
Yeah.
And
I've wondered.
and if there are certain conditions that Kouri Richins experienced growing up, which a lot of instability, there might be some personality disorders, cluster B personality disorders, maybe, that would tend to explain some of those types of behaviors, right? The impulsiveness and the lack of a stable self. So, like, for example, one of a diagnosis that relies heavily on the idea of instability and the idea of unstable affect and emotion and unstable sense of self. In particular, that would be borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
So I don't know if it applies to her. Never interviewed her. I've never met her, but it might be the type of personality disorder that could have some relevance here and would help explain potentially why someone like Kouri Richins would wear so many masks.
Have such an amplified, varying degree of who she is.
Or
Masks.
lack a stable sense of self.
Yeah. Because it's so extreme. It's very confusing.
Right. And on that point, let's move to the medical examiner call.
Okay,
So this was another one of the homework assignments you gave me, was to analyze this call.
And this was a recording with Dr. Christensen, who happens to have also done the autopsy for Tammy Daybell, the Utah chief medical examiner. It wasn't who did Eric Richins' autopsy, but he did take this call from Kouri about the autopsy. And he did sign off on the autopsy.
Hey, this is Kouri Richins. Hey, I just have some quick questions for you. I'm just trying to understand the toxicology report, and I promise I won't take up a ton of your time.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
Can you just kind of explain to me, I guess, she was saying that this kind of supplemental report, I guess, was left out of the first autopsy, and so nothing has really changed. Do you have it in front of you?
I do. Yeah, I got the file here.
So can you?
So just so you know, so we issue supplemental reports, like if once the original report's issued, if we do any additional testing, if we do any additional microscopic examination, anything like that, then we include that. You know, we issue a supplemental report to include that additional information. And sometimes it does change the cause or manner, but in this case it didn't.
Okay, it was just like extra testing done?
Extra tox testing, yeah. So originally the testing, the only toxicology testing that was done was on blood. And so then this was additional testing on stomach contents.
Okay, and so is there a difference in that, I guess?
Well, they just tell you different things in the sense of, it tells you something about what, was it, is it been there a long time? Is this something the person's been using for a long time?
Okay.
Is it something they ate? Is it something they, injected? Is it, whatever? And there's different things you can learn by looking at different substances. I mean, we fully expected to find it in the stomach. It's just a question of what was there.
So does this tell you, like, if it was like injected, if he ate it, is that what this, can you tell from this report?
Not definitively. I mean, it seems like, with what the amount that's there, that it probably was ingested. Probably taken by mouth.
Okay, and so so the 15 ng, like, is that like a substantial amount? Is that like a trace?
That's a lot of fentanyl in the blood. Yeah, I mean, that's, people die with half that amount or less in their system.
Okay, so that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
what's the next one down? The norfentanyl.
It's a metabolite of fentanyl. It's what your body changes fentanyl into after you take it.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. And then, sorry, just the third one, the acetyl. I don't know how you say that.
Acetylfentanyl.
Oh.
Yeah, that's just it's a form of, it's a variant of fentanyl that is usually only present in the setting of illicitly manufactured fentanyl.
Illicit manufactured, like a pharmacy?
No. Like a lot of most fentanyl that we see that ends up leading people to die these days is related to fentanyl that's manufactured by drug cartels as opposed to by pharmaceutical companies.
Oh, good Lord! So this is like more of like a cartel. No, I mean that's not what it is.
You call this the street fentanyl as opposed to hospital
prescription.
fentanyl.
Okay, I see. And then is the ethanol, is that alcohol?
That's alcohol. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and is that like the 279? Is that kind of like a substantial amount, or is that like one drink? Is that 5 drinks?
You can't tell how much it is, and in this case, since this testing was sent, quite a long time after the original autopsy, most likely that's related to post-mortem change, but it could be stuff that he drank. There's not really a way to sort that out. It could be related to decomposition of the stomach contents, or it could be related to stuff he drank. But either way, in the stomach contents, there's no way to know what that level means in terms of, if that was a blood level, that would be the same as a 0.28, which would be, that person would be pretty substantially intoxicated. But because it's gastric contents, you could in theory pull something out and it would be, 100% ethanol, if, depending on if they just drank a stomach full of, if they just drank a bunch of Everclear or something else. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really tell you much about how much they drank or what they drank or anything like that.
I gotcha.
When it's in the stomach. And it's not present in his blood, so. I
gotcha, okay. So it's not present in the blood, just the gastric or whatever.
Right.
Okay,
Yep.
And then just the last one, what is quetiapine?
Quetiapine is an antipsychotic medication. It's called Seroquel.
Okay. I gotcha.
It's a prescription mental health medication that's prescribed for different things.
I got you. Okay. And it has like 16,000?
16,000 nanograms per milliliter. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is that, I mean, quite a bit? Like, can that...
Yeah, I mean, that's a big number, but it doesn't really mean that much. You know, so a nanogram is a millionth of a gram, and a gram is not very big. So even 16,000 of them is not a huge amount.
Okay. Is there like, could those have been mixed, or is that not kind of a...
What's that? Could what be mixed?
Quetiapine and like the fentanyl? Or I mean, is that like a normal, I guess, drug thing? I don't know. Like,
it's not. I mean, you know, most of the time, if we see those together, it's because somebody was taking quetiapine as a prescribed medication and they were abusing fentanyl. But you know, there's, you know, do you have any indication he was abusing fentanyl?
No, that's why all of this is just like, what the heck is this and going on? So I guess that's why I'm confused just about all of this, honestly. So yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, I know it doesn't mean anything now, but just kind of something for me to, you know, try and figure out, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm assuming the acetopin, is that like a aspirin or something?
Acetaminophen, that's just Tylenol. Yeah.
Oh, that's fentanyl too?
No, that's Tylenol.
Oh, Tylenol. I was like, holy shit. Okay.
Yeah.
So just like Tylenol, caffeine, and then the naloxone, I'm assuming, is just something that they gave him while he was here?
Probably would be my guess. It'd be, you know, somebody that's unresponsive. It's a very common thing for EMS to give people.
Okay. Okay, no, that works. So I was just trying to figure out, you know, if this is anything different, if we found out anything new.
Yeah, like she said, it doesn't change anything in the cause or manner of death. It's still, you know, definitely, you know, death from fentanyl intoxication, and we still don't know how he got it into him.
Yeah, and I mean, is that anything you could ever find out if it was? I mean, do people normally eat that? Like, take it? Like, is that something you like shoot?
It's not usually something people eat. Well, that's not even true anymore. So with illicitly manufactured stuff, sometimes people take pills that have that. So yeah, these days you can't really tell.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate your time. I do. Thank you very much. And
yep. If you have other questions, don't hesitate to give me a call.
Okay. Awesome. What was your name?
Dr. Christensen.
Oh, Christensen. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay. Bye bye.
So I listened to this call, and my first question was, why is she making this call?
Right.
Right? Like, I mean,
I think we're all wondering that.
yeah, I mean, does she need to make this call? I mean, clearly she's trying to get information.
Right.
And, you know, presumably she wants to feel in control of the situation. She's clearly anxious about whatever the findings are going to be, right? I think that's what the prosecutor's trying to show.
Yeah.
That she's making this call because she's desperate. There's some desperation here. She's desperate to figure out what the medical examiner knows.
Well, and the Richins family, I think, is suspecting her, and she realizes that. The life insurance is doing an automatic investigation into things because it had been open just a month before he died. So even without a police investigation, she already has some people, you know, suspecting her. Yeah, but you know, if you're innocent, just let it take its course, right? Just let the medical examiner do its thing.
Right. She's not going to change what they find. And so if you look at it, what you have, what this shows is largely what I would call narrative manipulation. And narrative manipulation is the idea that we want to exert some control over how events get interpreted.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what you see with Bryce, right? That's clear narrative manipulation. That's what you see with Chelsea, right? That's what you see. That's what you see with the police to some degree.
Yes.
Like from the minute the police come in, all the way through until now, you have this narrative manipulation, which is trying to control the interpretation of events.
Yes.
And so it's a version of impression management, but it's a little deeper than that. It goes deeper than that. And what's fascinating about this call with the medical examiner is kind of, I don't know how else to describe this except to say, like, she kind of plays Dom, right? Like, she kind of plays, like, she plays kind of this innocent,
Naive,
ignorant,
dumb.
unknowing person that's like, like an example of that is, so I didn't know this, but, Seroquel, by the way, Seroquel is an antipsychotic. I know the drug well because when I was working on the inpatient wards, and my first assignment was on the inpatient ward at the VA, and man, that was fascinating, let me tell you. But Seroquel was handed out like candy. And the reason that it was prescribed so much on the inpatient ward was because it's a sedative. So they would just, it depends on how much you give someone, obviously, but they would give these guys like a ton of Seroquel and they'd just knock them out, right? Because these guys would come in agitated and psychotic, and it's an antipsychotic. And it's mainly used to try to balance certain neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine. But it's the I would know, it was given to these guys all the time, right? And so Seroquel, I didn't know this until I listened to the medical examiner, and then you explained to me that she had a prescription
Correct. It was her prescription.
for Seroquel.
Correct.
But she plays dumb, like she doesn't. Oh, what's Seroquel?
I know.
What's Seroquel?
It's such
She
a-
has a prescription.
She has it's a tell. I know. What's Seroquel? I know. That's a mask. That's not just like a public and private persona anymore.
Right. It's a mask.
It's a
because
mask.
she has it. It's given to her. At the very least, the pharmacist would be like, hey, by the way, this is Seroquel. And this is what it's for. I don't know why she's getting it.
Right.
Is she getting it because sometimes it could be anxiety? It depends, right? I don't know. I don't know why she's getting it, but she clearly knows what it is because she's been prescribed Seroquel. And then the most interesting part was when he mentions, she says, what's I don't know, she mispronounces acetaminophen, which is Tylenol. Most people, if you've taken Tylenol at all.
If you have a child.
Right.
I mean, and she has 3.
Right.
You give him child's Tylenol, children's Tylenol. You know what Tylenol is. Acetaminophen.
What's how do you pronounce what? And he's like, oh yeah, that's Tylenol. She's like, oh, it's like,
I know.
give me a break.
Yeah.
Like, clearly this is, so yes, this is a mask.
It's a mask.
This is about narrative manipulation. Another way to describe that would be impression management. But surely she probably doesn't anticipate that this call is going to be played at a murder trial.
No.
But if you take the medical examiner call and you take the body cam footage and you take the call to Bryce and you take the text to Josh, right? If you line all these things up, you see different masks. You see different impressions that she's trying to create. You see different personas. And all of that, by the way, would suggest that this is someone who fundamentally doesn't know who they are. This is someone who fundamentally probably has a very unstable sense of self. And that would also explain part of this issue around greed. Because if you don't know who you are and you don't know what you value, then you're almost certainly going to grasp more for things that you don't want, like material possessions or affairs and relationships and romances where you get validation that you're seeking. In other words, the idea of the hungry ghost comes back into play here because it's endless.
Right.
There's no limits, right? The problem with the idea, or one of the ideas behind the hungry ghosts, is that hungry ghosts know no limits. There's no amount of nourishment you can give a hungry ghost that's going to satisfy them or fill them up.
Yeah.
And life is limits. Whether we like it or not, we deal with limits.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. That's reality.
The way it is. Yeah.
And so part of this is these different masks, right? They show not only does she not know herself, but she's exceeding all these limits to try to get something that she doesn't even know she wants, right? She doesn't know what she wants. She doesn't know how to get it. And so she's falling back on kind of these things that she thinks that she should want, that the culture is telling her are important, like wealth. She lives in Park City. She, like you said earlier, she's keeping up. She's trying to keep up with the Joneses. She
Right.
thinks all of this is going to make her happy. And behind all of that is this fundamental fantasy, and this is going to take us full circle, is this fundamental fantasy about how this fictional representation or this fantasy of home is going to somehow save her and rescue her. And that's why she clings so desperately to keeping that home, not only her existing home, but this is also why she's in real estate.
Well, it's also a question that I have about Chelsea Barney. I mean, is this some psychological thing? She has this best friend, right? Best friend since junior high, a ride or die.
Okay.
Chelsea, she's on the Bryce calls. And she helps Chelsea get into her first home, her forever home, with her entire life savings. You know, first I think she's trying to help her best friend, right? Like, okay, she's like $45,000 down payment. This is Chelsea. It's her best friend. Sounds like she's trying to help her. You can sign the deed. The house is yours. Just pay mortgage. She wants it to be her forever home. She has 3 kids. She has a 4th child in the home. She pays the mortgage every month. She's very responsible. Kouri gets arrested. And what happens? Turns out that Kouri actually never sent in the paperwork. So Chelsea never did sign the house. Even though she signed the deed, that isn't what they had. And Kouri had been taking out other loans from the house. It went into foreclosure. And Chelsea, her best friend, is kicked out of her home, her forever home, because of Kouri. And I wondered if there was something psychological there too. Not only does she have to destroy her own home, she has to destroy her best friend's home, even though in the beginning it looks like all she wants is a stable home for herself and a stable home for Chelsea and maybe all of her, BFFs that she was friends with that maybe, didn't have what the rich people in Park City had. And she's going to help them, right? And then she does that to her.
Well, a couple of thoughts. The idea, this fantasy of home only applies to Kouri.
Okay.
Kouri doesn't, even though this is her best friend, I think there's probably an element of sabotage here.
Okay.
Because unconsciously of Kouri's environment growing up, because of her own sense of instability, she's probably sabotaging her friend. I think this is someone who, my guess is, doesn't have a lot of empathy.
Kouri. Yeah.
Kouri.
Right.
Right. And so in that sense, I think she's only concerned about her sense of home and her fantasy of home and creating that. I don't think she really cares about, sure, it looks like she's helping her best friend.
But it's about Kouri feeling good.
It's about Kouri feeling good about herself. Correct. She's not trying to help her friend. She's trying to help her own sense,
Her self-esteem.
her own sense of self and her own sense of morality.
Yeah. Right.
And if you go deep enough, I'd probably say that there's an element of sabotage there. She's actually trying to harm her friend.
Right.
Because she doesn't want her friend to be happy. And she doesn't want her friend to have the stable environment that she wants for herself and that she never had as a child.
She's going to make sure her friend, the deed isn't under her
Correct.
friend's name.
Correct. So I would even argue that it's surface based.
Yeah.
She wants
Ego.
is making her feel good about herself, but the reality is that's not what she wants. What she really wants is to take care of herself, and she doesn't care if she harms her friend in the process.
Yeah. It's serving Kouri's ego, her ego.
Correct. Her friend is a means to an end, and
Okay.
the end is taking care of Kouri.
Okay. Thanks for clearing that up because I thought that was a fascinating thing about home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's going to kind of bring us, since we're kind of coming back to this idea of home, I think it's going to bring us to some final thoughts.
Okay.
Can you believe it? I don't know how long we've been doing this, but
Well, I have questions though about
okay.
Josh.
Yeah.
The text with Josh.
Okay.
This whole idea of home. She says to Josh her dream
Okay.
in text that we haven't covered.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about those.
I want to bring that up. She
Okay.
says, let's get married. Let's
Yeah.
live in the guest house
Yeah.
of the Midway Mansion. To me, this is really important, especially if we're talking about home.
Okay.
So this text to Josh that I thought was kind of important was her sharing her plans that she wants to live in the guest house of the Midway Mansion. It's a 4,000 square foot home, so don't underestimate the guest house. And run an event center, hardly have to work, just live off the money of the event center. And she has this sort of whole plan, raise some kids. And that's what the Midway Mansion, I think, kind of represents to her
Yeah.
too, is this sort of whole other future. So even though she wants the home that she lived in with Eric, she's
Right.
already planning another home and another life
Yeah,
and another idea.
it gets to the idea of the hungry ghost. It gets to this idea of that if you find the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, you'll be done. You'll be happy. Everything will be fine. Everything will be complete. It's pure fantasy.
Yeah.
Josh is not a real person to her. She thinks he is. Josh exists in her fantasy world. Josh is a prop.
I agree.
She says these things, but Josh could be anyone.
I agree.
And so in that sense, yes, Josh is just a part of this drama that she's in. He's a fictional character to her.
In her fantasy.
She may, there might have been a point where if the body was cremated and there was no investigation, that if she walked away from all this, she may have married him. It's possible. I don't think that marriage would have worked
No.
because it was based on a fantasy. It wasn't real. None of this is real. This is someone who says she's worth $11 million,
Right.
who's multi-million dollars in debt. This is all a fiction
Correct.
to her. And by the way, I mean, that's part of the reason this gets to the point of murder. Because when you live in this type of fiction as fully and completely as she does, murder doesn't seem as real as it might to a normal person. And the consequences of that don't seem as real.
Mm-hmm.
And you believe, if you're in this fantasy, you believe that you can do whatever you want. You can walk away from murder, and the police officer's not going to say to you, hey, he's really young. He didn't have any health problems. We need to check this out. She's astounded that the police officer says that. She's like, what? That's not how I played it out in my fantasy world.
Right.
What do you mean? Like, don't take the body to the medical examiner. Everything's fine.
Right.
Or talking to Bryce, like, I don't know how he died. She says to Bryce, maybe, I don't know how he died. Maybe he drank too much water. That was another explanation, by the
That
way.
one was what the
Like
heck?
he died from water poisoning.
That was a weird one.
Right? I mean, like, how many explanations are we going to have to hear?
Yeah.
What's the jury hearing?
All of them.
All of them. Right? All of them. But yeah, as far as Josh, I mean, I actually feel bad for the guy in the sense that, like, he's just a dupe. Like, he comes along and he's like a prop in her world. She uses him. I mean,
I think there was some using.
well,
both-
okay,
both-
true.
both
That's
ends
true.
there. I mean, I hear you, but
But the important point is that this fantasy she has about home is not real. Nor, if we want to understand Kouri, nor is she capable. Nor does she have the mental or emotional or psychological health to create a healthy home.
yeah. Yeah. I agree. What the jury will see is to be determined. The jury is out.
Yeah. And so I think I want to, let's talk about, if she can't create a healthy home, then what is a healthy home? Right? What is love? Right? I mean, that's, oh my God, can't believe I said, I feel like, so I remember when I was a kid, my dad he watched this show called the Benny Hill Show, which is this British crazy show. And I remember, the only thing I remember about the Benny Hill Show, because I was little, is my dad would put this show on, and I thought Benny Hill was like this ridiculous guy. You probably don't even know Benny Hill.
Nope. Don't.
And Benny Hill, one of his little gags was he would always say, "What is this thing called, love?" Right, and they do variations on it.
Okay, so now
What
I
is
feel like-
this? What is this? Like, what is this thing called, love? What is this thing called, love? Right.
Now I feel like I do know who he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why I remember that, but I feel like we're now, I just stepped into like,
Benny
I
Hill
stepped into the,
territory.
yeah, I stepped into the realm of like comedy by asking, what is love? What is this thing called? Love? What is this thing called love? Right? I don't know which one. Maybe in terms of this discussion, maybe the best way to think about love is that the person sees the world as not something to consume, but as something to relate to.
Mm.
And that's a big difference, right? When you're consuming stuff, you're doing it for your own benefit. When you're relating to something, you're doing it because there's mutuality,
Yeah.
right? Like, I would say if you want to create a healthy home, maybe that's the place to start. More relational interactions, more relationships, less consumption. And that's not to say, I don't mean like every normal home is going to consume. When I say consumption, I mean Kouri Richins type consumption. Consumption above and beyond what's necessary. Consumption with the goal of somehow finding this end state that doesn't exist. Dysfunctional consumption.
Yes. Relate instead of consume. I like that.
I wrote in my notes, the greed, right? Greed tries to fill the self by taking, whereas love enlarges the self by relating.
Let me see these notes.
Right?
I like it. The problem is not simply wanting too much. The problem is the external acquisition cannot reliably resolve internal instability, emptiness, or suffering. I know you talked about it. I just like reading your notes. Yes. Love is what helps the person stop treating the world as something to consume and start inhabiting it as something to relate to. Greed tries to fill the self by taking. Love enlarges the self by relating. Dr. John Matthias.
Greed says, I must take in order to survive. Love says, I can receive, give, and remain real. Love is surrender, reciprocity, empathy, and care. Those are all things that are lacking in the Richins home. Well, maybe not all. Eric, I'm sure, brought some of those elements. Kouri may have brought some of those elements at certain times, but not consistently.
Definitely not consistent.
Right, exactly. Because she was so focused on the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, which never existed. And that, by the way, if this is murder, if she did commit this murder, that's why.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We start back up on covering the trial again Monday.
Tomorrow.
And then later this week or next week, I'll be a part of something more. We'll share that more later. And so thank you. Thank you for coming here. And as the evidence comes down in the Kouri Richins case, I'll be keeping you posted. The defense, or not the defense, excuse me, the prosecution is supposed to end either late tomorrow or Tuesday, according to the prosecution.
Wow.
They're going to rest.
Okay.
And then it's the defense's turn. So we'll see. We'll see.
So it sounds like it's well ahead of schedule.
Yeah. And the defense has some things on their side. There is no murder weapon. There is no fentanyl.
Right. I know.
There's no one single damning text. There's a lot of texts that as a whole do not look good.
Yeah.
But there's no text from Kouri or communication that they have in evidence that says, I'm going to do this. Let's kill Eric.
Yeah.
There's no accomplice that knows exactly what she was doing, that she told this to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is a lot of circumstantial evidence in this case.
Right. Yeah, it's not necessarily a slam dunk.
Right.
Of many of the cases we've covered, this one has more, I think it has more uncertainty.
I agree.
I mean, I think when you line up all the pieces, and if you pay really close attention to the stuff we talked about today, it doesn't look good.
No. And I put the pieces together as I do these recaps sort of, and I'm laying it out and thinking, oh yeah, they're connecting all the puzzle pieces for me. And of course, that's what the jury will do at the end is, and that's the question is, will they connect it all? We don't know. But I've sort of had those moments where I think, oh yeah, okay, I'm really seeing this. But you know, then you kind of go back the next day and you think, is every juror gonna do that? Are they gonna see this?
Will they see? And this is one of those questions I asked much earlier in this show. Will they see her as a grieving widow, right? Or will they see her as a fearful widow, as someone who has something to hide? Or maybe not even something to hide, someone who clearly is hiding something or has tried to hide something.
Right. We'll see. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll
Thank
see
you.
ya.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Uh-huh.
Good night.
Good night.